Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this Stay Cool in Sarasota webinar, where we're going to learn about the hotspots in our county and ways that we can stay safe. So my name is Aaliyah Garrett. I'm the Sustainability Outreach Coordinator at Sarasota County Extension. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Extension, we are a partnership between the University of Florida, the county, and the USDA. And we get to use all of their amazing research and resources to address local community needs. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to discuss extreme heat and urban heat islands, the NASA Develop project, where those hotspots are in our county, who's at risk, some special considerations, how to be prepared, and then safety during extreme heat. So what are extreme heat and urban heat islands? So extreme heat is a period of really unusually hot weather that's often combined with high humidity. We see that a lot here in Florida. And urban heat islands occur in areas that have a lot of pavement and older buildings and not a lot of tree canopy coverage or vegetation. So what causes extreme heat? There are natural factors. So, seasonal changes during the summer, it's always hotter, or geographic location. In Florida, we're very south by the equator, so it's hotter here. But there's also human-induced factors like urban heat islands or climate change. So how does this impact us? There's a lot of health risk involved. So, heat exhaustion, heat stroke, but there's also societal impacts like strain on our power grid and economic costs as well. And there's environmental effects, many, but just a couple. Droughts and wildfires are good examples. So in our county since the 1970s, extreme heat has become a more prevalent issue. So we've seen about a 2.6 degree rise in temperature during the day and about a 5.9 degree increase in temperature during the nighttime. So our average summer temperature is about 85 degrees. But last year, 2023, was reported as the warmest year on record, and we had 63 consecutive hot days, with one full week in August with the heat index, which is the feels like temperature, at 110 degrees. So, it's very concerning, and we want to make sure that we're educating our community about extreme heat and how to stay safe. And also, this was interesting. The Union of Concerned Scientists created a report in 2019 and found that the number of hot days might continually increase to 131 days by mid-century, which is just mind-blowing to think about. I mean, in 2023, we had 63 consecutive hot days. So just think about it being hot 131 days out of the year. All right, so what did NASA say? So we partnered with NASA to do a county-wide extreme heat vulnerability assessment. And I wanted to know not just where it's the hottest, but also where the most vulnerable community members are. So this study was about 10 weeks long, and they collected data from 5 summers spanning from 2019 to 2023. So we use data from the International Space Station and also Landsats 8 and 9, which are satellites, and they collected land surface temperature, albedo, which is like reflectivity, and evapotranspiration, which helps cool our land surface temperature. NASA also gathered socioeconomic and environmental variables, including land cover, population density, age. There was like 16 variables, but we'll talk about those a little bit later. So where are the hotspots? The identified hotspots they're in this sequential order: Newtown, Venice, and Northport. So what made these areas the most vulnerable is that they have really high land surface temperatures. There's a lot of elderly people, and there's also some socioeconomic vulnerabilities, such as being unhoused or not having cars, inability to pay electric bills. So these are the top 3 areas, though they did find that it's hot throughout the county. So for North Sarasota, this is by far the highest overall vulnerability to heat hazards. So their primary mitigation spot. So it contains multiple census tracts that have high rates of unemployment and poverty, and they also have a daytime land surface temperature over 100 degrees. So this is a particularly vulnerable area. Venice has a high amount of people that are age 65 or older, and there are a few pockets of communities there that live below the poverty line. So with increased land surface temperature, this is priority area number 2. Number 3, we have Northport. It has a similar combination of issues as North Sarasota and Venice, where it has those pockets of poverty as well as high land surface temperature. So who's at risk? Everyone is at risk and susceptible to heat-related illnesses, but there are some groups that are more prone to heat-related illnesses for various reasons. So we have outdoor workers, they're spending a lot of time outdoors, working in the heat, athletes, people age 65 or older, pregnant women, infants and young children, unsheltered populations, and people with chronic illnesses. And this is not an exhaustive list, but these are those main groups. So again, yeah, with elderly people, age-related physical changes, medication, and other chronic conditions can really prevent the body from being able to cool itself down. So they might not respond to temperature changes as efficient. Infants and young children, again, same as elderly people, their bodies are less efficient at regulating temperature. And they rely on us to keep them cool and hydrated. My niece, she'll be running around for 5 hours and not have a sip of water unless I mention it to her. So really important that we're keeping our young ones hydrated and cool. People with chronic illnesses, so conditions like heart disease, diabetes, respiratory issues as well can affect the body's ability to respond to heat. Outdoor workers, of course, being outside all day, that's impacts your ability to cool itself down. So safety measures are super important. Unhoused individuals, because they have lack of shelter and access to cool environments, it makes them very vulnerable. Athletes, if you're doing a lot of workouts in the hot sun, that can really lead to some heat-related illnesses. So maybe don't work out in the middle of the day. Stay hydrated, take breaks, all of those sort of things. And then we have low-income households, which might not be able to afford utility bills. So limited access to that air conditioning, especially at night, can be really troublesome. Some more special considerations, medications and health conditions. So some medications can affect the body's ability to regulate its temperature. So make sure you're talking to your healthcare provider, your doctor, and understand any impacts that your medications might have during extreme heat events. Same thing with chronic conditions. Just make sure you're following medical advice and keeping your medications in a cool place. Pets, we never want to leave them in a car alone. We also want to make sure that they have access to water and shade as well. Please avoid taking them on walks in the afternoon when the pavement is really, really hot. They can't tell you how hot it is, but it really does burn their little toes. Some more special considerations, again, can't stress this enough. We got to watch out for children. They generate heat, they're running around, and they might not realize that they are overheating or are dehydrated. So we got to check on them constantly. Isolated individuals, this is really important. People who are living alone. So if you notice your neighbors or relatives or any friends that live alone, especially if they're elderly, please do check on them. It's really important. Some more special considerations, people with mental health conditions. Again, medication might respond differently in the heat. Same thing with awareness and response. We want to make sure that people are receiving support, especially during extreme heat events. And residents of urban areas, again, that urban heat island effect, those urban areas tend to be hotter than the surrounding area because there's a lot of heat absorbing surfaces like asphalt and concrete and not as much green space to help cool down. People using public transportation, there's exposure during commutes. So if you're outside waiting for the bus, really just want to make sure to try to find some shade. And a big one, tourists and visitors. We have a lot of tourists and visitors in our county, and they're not ready for how hot it is. They know it's going to be hot, but Just making sure that they're in the know. They might not recognize those signs of heat-related illnesses or might not be aware of where to find those resources. So if you see somebody confused and hot looking, maybe just let them know that they need to be inside or find some cool place, get some water, because they're not fully aware of how hot it is and what the effects are of that. So how do we be prepared in advance for extreme heat events? We want to stay informed, check the weather, make sure that it's not going to be an extreme heat event. And if there is, definitely get prepared. You can also create a plan. So create an emergency plan that you can outline where the closest cooling centers are and what you're going to do if there is an extreme heat event. How to stay cool, use air-conditioned spaces and fans to prevent those heat-related illnesses. Hydrating is a great way to prevent heat-related illnesses. And again, can't stress this enough. We want to check on our neighbors. We want to check on those vulnerable populations, especially people who are elderly or isolated. It's good to know what the symptoms are of heat-related illness. So, heavy sweating, muscle cramps, fainting, if your pulse is fast and weak, if your skin is cold, pale, and clammy, if you're really weak or fatigued, you have nausea and vomiting, or dizziness or headache. So it's good to know the signs. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the first aid for each of those different types of heat-related illness. And again, this is just preparedness. So we're in the know. And when we start seeing these symptoms in ourselves or in others, that way we know what to do. Heat cramps. So this is one of the heat-related illnesses. Your symptoms are going to include muscle pains or spasms. These are often going to be in the abdomen, the arms, or the legs. What you want to do is stop doing any physical activity, drink water and electrolyte solutions if you can, and you want to stretch and massage your muscles. Next step up is heat exhaustion. You're going to be sweating profusely. You're going to feel weak and fatigued. You're going to be dizzy. You're going to have a headache, maybe nauseous. What you want to do, you got to move to a cooler place. Try to get inside. If inside isn't an option, definitely get to shade. You want to loosen your clothing. Don't want anything tight constricting you. You want to sip water. Don't chug water. Your body can't deal with all that right now. You don't want to throw up. And apply cool wet cloths. Maybe put them on the back of your neck, under your armpits, between your thighs, just places that'll help cool you down really, really quickly. But try to get inside. This is terrible. You do not want to have a heat stroke. I mean, none of these things are a good time, but a heat stroke is very dangerous, can be fatal. So your body temperature is going to be above 102 degrees, hot, red, dry, or damp skin, rapid and strong pulse, confusion, unconsciousness. You got to call 911 immediately. Move to a cooler environment, ideally inside, shade if that is not an option. Cool cloths, ice packs, again, back of the neck, under the arms. Don't give any fluids. They're going to throw up. It is not the time for that. You really just got to get them to a cool space. Another way we can be prepared is keeping our homes cool. So some options aside from just blasting your air conditioner are options to help your air conditioner work less hard. You can cover windows with drapes or shades during sunny summer days so that sunlight isn't coming up and warming up your home and making your air conditioner work real hard. Making sure that things are airtight, so weather stripping doors and windows so there's no air leakage. Use window reflectors to reflect that heat back outside. You can add insulation to keep heat out. And there's also some utility assistance and retrofit programs that we have. And there's a couple different organizations like Step Up Suncoast and the Light Heat program through Salvation Army. So please do reach out to us if you want some more information about those. Another preparedness option, know where the closest cooling centers or public spaces with air conditioning are. Really look close to your house. These are a couple that do exist. And then we have, of course, our libraries and some other public buildings, community centers that are available. So just find one that's close to your home. Make sure you know where it is, the hours, and all of their information. What do we do when it's really hot outside during these extreme heat events? So being safe. We want to, again, find a breeze or shade. We want to stay hydrated. We want to wear light colored and lightweight clothing. Don't want to do any strenuous activity, especially in the middle of the day. Never leaving anybody in the car, especially pets, kids, elderly people. Can't, and say this a bunch of times, but we not just checking on ourselves, but we're also checking on others, especially those vulnerable populations, especially elderly people and especially children, and pets, because they can't really tell us. So we got to make sure we're doing our due diligence. Don't use electric fans when the temperature is higher than 95 degrees, because it's just making you feel cooler, but it's not actually cooling down your body temperature. So that can be a bit dangerous. Call 911, again, heat stroke, but if a person loses consciousness, if there's any other change in alertness, if they're confused, or if they're having a seizure, if they have a fever over 102 degrees, any other symptoms of a heat stroke, so rapid pulse, rapid breathing, all the things that we discussed. And if their condition doesn't improve, even with treatment, so if you bring them into the air conditioning and they're still really not doing well, please call 911. So stay safe. Some key takeaways: extreme heat can be dangerous, even fatal, especially for those vulnerable groups. So we're going to keep checking on people. Preparation and awareness are crucial for preventing these illnesses. So now we know what types there are, the first aid involved with that. So that's really great to know. I'm so happy that you've listened to this. And also, to stay safe, we can stay informed, we can stay cool, take care of each other during these events, really check on one another, vulnerable people. I keep saying that, but it's just so deeply important. There are a ton of other resources available through the Science and Environment Council and the CDC, the ready.gov risk factor. Red Cross has some good information, a good fact sheet from OSHA for outdoor workers, and NOAA also has a great website that provides some heat safety tips. So with that, just want to say thank you, stay cool. Really appreciate you listening. And of course, don't ever hesitate to reach out if you'd like some more information from us. Thanks again.